Today we're going to take a look at the Sorcerer's Apprentice from Fantasia, Mickey Mouse. Mickey has one goal: maintain the most magic brooms possible. Brooms are Mickey's engine, and he's at his best when he can build up as many as possible. His cards get better if you gain 3 or more, and some of his attacks can be the absolute most damaging attacks in the game if played right. If you don't protect him though, he becomes extremely underwhelming. In order to properly discuss Mickey, I need to go over his primary status effect, the Magic Broom, and what they do since they are his specialty. During the beginning phase, if you have at least one Magic Broom, you may look at the top 2 cards in your deck, then rearrange them. If the card you draw then is a magic card, you may keep your status token, otherwise you lose one. This means that if your deck has a lot of magic cards, you're likely to maintain your brooms. Magic brooms enhance Mickey's cards and abilities in ways that we'll note when we go through the individual cards. So, let's take a look at how Mickey can mop the floor with his opponents by checking out his character card. Like most characters, Mickey can move 2 spaces, provide a hand size of 2, and hit for 2 damage. Mickey's health points stand at a respectable 8, and his victory points are tied for the least with 4. This deprioritizes him as a target, but that's where his danger lies. We'll talk about why in a bit. His skill is Magical Means. He can discard a magic card to gain 1 magic broom. Since several of his cards grant you 2 brooms, and 3 is the magic number for some of his abilities, this allows you to enjoy full benefits of most of his cards at the cost of 1 additional magic card. It's a pretty good trade-off, especially if you need just a little more firepower or have a lot of cards, but should only be used sparingly. Mickey's upgrade is the Helping Hand. At the end of each phase, if 2 or more magic brooms were added, then you may draw 1 card. This upgrade can turn into a quick way to draw cards and run through your deck rapidly. It's quite possible that Mickey could play 2 of his cards and end his turn with as many cards as he started his turn with. That's invaluable when it comes to maintaining your hand size. The thing to keep in mind here is that Mickey wants magical cards and magic brooms. We'll get into why soon enough. So, let's go through Mickey's cards and break it down a little further. I'll be going from most common to least common, as some cards appear in the deck multiple times. Shooting Star is his most common card, appearing 3 times. It allows him to hit an adjacent rival for 3 damage. However, if Mickey has at least 3 counters on status effects, this attack gains a range of 3. Most of the time, those 3 counters will be 3 brooms, but it's not necessary. Having a range of 3 is unusual and allows you to hit most of the board if you're near the center. For a common attack card like this, the range should not be underestimated, and it helps Mickey to attack at a protected range. Still, this card might be used as fuel for Mickey's Magical Means at times. Next is Studied Steps, which appears twice. Mickey moves up to 2 spaces but gains 2 magic brooms. This card is Mickey's most common way of gaining brooms during the movement phase. It's a rapid way of increasing Mickey's offense, but also might make you more of a target if you have too many brooms. Be wary of when you use it and whether Mickey is in a position to survive for another round. If he's been upgraded, this move will also grant Mickey an extra card at the end of the movement phase. This is a good card that sets you up for future attacks. What attack, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I'm going to talk about that right now. Magical Mop appears twice and is potentially the best attack in the game. Mickey gains 2 brooms, then he hits an adjacent rival. For how much? 1 damage for each broom Mickey has. So if he has 3 brooms, then 3 damage. If he has 11 brooms, then it does 11 damage. From an offensive standpoint, everything Mickey does is trying to get him to this point, so make sure you have enough brooms when you unleash this attack. Swirlpool has no range limit. It allows Mickey to do 1 indirect damage to each of your rivals. However, if Mickey has at least 3 counters on status effects, this attack does 2 damage instead. This is good indirect damage that can catch your opponent by surprise. It only takes a handful of large attacks like this to leave your opponent scrambling for an apprentice of their own. Mystical Momentum is extremely similar to Studied Steps. Mickey moves up to 2 spaces but gains 2 magic brooms. However, if Mickey has at least 3 counters on status effects, he gains an additional movement phase. You could save this for going extremely far really quickly, but I would use this in order to really surprise your rival by gaining several brooms in one turn. In theory, you can start with one broom, use mystical momentum, then studied steps, and finally magical mob to move up to 4 spaces and unleash a 7 damage attack all at once. This card should be saved unless you can get a good use out of that additional movement phase. Quick Recall can seem boring, but should be saved for the mid to late game. It allows Mickey to move 3 spaces, then takes a magic card from the discard pile and puts it into your hand. If you're focused on Mickey to do damage, the obvious use of this would be to regain magical mob, or even mystical momentum to quickly gain brooms. However, if you are using other characters with magic, this card can lend support depending on the situation, not to mention that 3 steps are pretty great. So, does the Apprentice become the master here? It depends. Mickey is about momentum, plain and simple. He wants to gain brooms and unleash their potential with magical mob. That's mostly it. He does have some other benefits like magical synergy and card draw when you upgrade him, but Mickey really comes down to, can Mickey stay alive long enough to utilize a sizable magical mob? Because if he can't, he loses all of his brooms. If you're teaching this style of game to your apprentices, Mickey's lesson is about teaching them to think about patience and the long game. Can they hold off from using their mob too quickly? Will they keep Mickey away from the action until he's ready to strike? Mickey wants another magical character to really shine. He can work okay by himself, but if you want to gain momentum quickly and keep brooms, magical cards is what you want. Be careful of any characters that can reduce Mickey's brooms, like Ariel. One possible strategy is to hold off on accumulating most of your brooms until you can do them in one turn, then build them up and KO an isolated rival all at once. If you can do that while keeping Mickey safe until his next turn, he may be set up to do good damage the next time as well. Finally, let's touch on the trick with Mickey's VP. He's tied for the lowest VP in the game, so people are not going to want to target him. However, the most consistent way to cut off Mickey's momentum is to target him for relatively low VP. If rivals ignore Mickey and his brooms, he will eventually become the MVP of your game. Still, you can't just hone in on KOing Mickey, as you'll likely be stuck losing the damage and VP race. It's a great design choice that makes countering Mickey fully dependent on the situation. His strengths lie in the fact that he can one-hit KO any rival in the game with enough brooms. Each of the primary magic users have pretty decent synergy. He doesn't need others to gain momentum, but it would definitely help. His weaknesses are that he has pretty low damage in the early game. You live by the broom and you die by the broom. Mickey is very mediocre without them, but with them, he can be a monster. Mickey only has 2, potentially 3 opportunities to pull off his big attack. Make sure to use them well. Mickey is straightforward to use, but that path isn't instinctive to many players. Patience is power for Mickey. As I mentioned before, Mickey can independently play his own game as a third wheel, but he really does encourage you to combine him with others who feed his magical engine. With that in mind, I would suggest the following: Maleficent, Dr. Facilier, and Mickey. This team is the magic team, and they support each other well. Maleficent's upgrade, Facilier's skill, and Mickey's skill call for magic cards to populate the deck. What it lacks in defense, it makes up for in constant offense and status effects. This was one of the most dominant teams that I'm aware of. Mickey's brooms will never run out unless he's KO'd. This is a low VP team, so even though they're frail, they're just fine trading KOs. But one of the flaws on this team is that Maleficent and Mickey share an upgrade path, so you'll likely have to pick only one of them to be upgraded, based on whether you want cards or damage. Mickey, Sully, Dr. Facilier. Sully has the ability to protect Mickey and the Doctor with his taunt, which gives them the space to support each other and build momentum. Mickey and Facilier have the least VP, while Sully has the most, so we know who will be a target. But they can also protect Sully with big damage and debilitating effects. Each member of this team has a different upgrade path, so you have a decent chance of upgrading all 3 by the end of the game. Facilier can extend and increase the benefits of Taunt, Tough, and Brooms, So while this isn't a full magical synergy team, it stretches the benefits of the mechanics to the max. Now, it's not necessary to use Facilier or Maleficent in order to make Mickey successful, because Mickey can work decently on his own. However, in order to best spotlight his abilities, we recommend using someone with magic cards, and those two have the most. So that's our breakdown of Mickey. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to stick around for the next breakdown. But until then, come, old broomstick. You are needed. See you next time.